thanks for agreeing to take part and for sharing, because you are the author of this wonderful book. And as you can see, Simon, I've got so many sticky tags on this, so I actually refer to this book quite a lot.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's the ultimate honor, actually, having sticky tags in a book. Sticky tags and underline.
I loved working on this book with you. It was so much fun. So what I actually wanted to talk about, because your work revolves around getting buy-in, right? So
Yeah.
getting on, others on board for your big idea or your project. And I also think that there's no bigger kind of idea or project than a book, and getting other people's, buy-in for your idea, or what you put together into a book.
Nice. Yeah.
So what kinds of things did you consider that you might need to build support around when you started thinking about writing and publishing a book?
Yeah. I mean, look, that's, I think, a really important part of it, because in fact, if there were moments along the process of writing the book, it might have been that were most challenging, it was often because you felt either more alone or more disconnected with some of that support crew around you. And I think because you do go into this place of being both kind of absorbed in your own thinking and your own ideas and your own pain of the journey at times, and then sometimes your own joy of what you're creating from it, that the support crew you put around you is really important. I found a big part of that was, the most immediate support crew for me was the family, particularly my wife. I remember when I first said to her, I want to write a book, there were kind of like slightly glazed eyes about that. And I suppose unless you're in it, it doesn't necessarily make sense that, well, hang on, you're busy delivering a training business or you're a speaker or you're running training. Why do you want to write a book? Like, that's being an author. And it was an interesting moment that for a lot of people, I think the assumption was that if you're writing a book, it means you've stopped everything else for a year and you've kind of gone into the hills and you've become a full-time author for a year. And I still get that comment and question from people around, when are you going to take time off to write a book? But of course, in the kind of practice that I'm running, you're not taking time off to write a book. You're doing it amidst everything else. So getting support and buy-in to the commitment of energy and time from family and friends, and those I'm working with in my business, was absolutely critical. So spending time with them around the why I want to write this, what would happen if we get it right, I talk in the book about embracing the black hole as this idea of, when you talk about an idea, people have concerns, resistance, fears about it. And what we often do is try and skate around that stuff and focus instead on, well, here's all the positives, here's all the upside, here's how it's going to be great. But actually, with family, it was really important to embrace the black hole and say, well, how's this going to affect us from a time and a commitment point of view and an energy point of view? How's that going to affect the summer holidays coming up? Because I was writing it over the Christmas, January break. How's this going to play out in terms of strain on cash flow? Because then there's all these pieces of the puzzle of, publishing the book that costs money as well. So there was definitely that side of it, which was really, really important. And that's not just at the beginning, that was throughout, continuing asking the question. Have I got people's kind of buy-in and support to this as well? Then there's perhaps the more, I don't know whether your question meant one or more of these, one or other of these more than the other, but then of course there was the buy-in from Wiley as the publisher, buy-in from the people I interviewed, and getting their permission to interview them and to publish their quotes or to use snippets of their case studies and so on. And that was really, really critical as well. And I think the most important part in that was to go slow with it. So almost to do it early. So to plan early, who am I going to want help from in this? And to be able to plant the seeds really early. So with Wiley, it was getting an introduction really early in the piece, not going to that first meeting with them going, I've got my proposal, here it is, let me pitch it to you. But actually to start with a really gentle conversation around, here's the world I work in, here's the ideas that in my head, I imagine there's a whole audience there who would really like to be able to read about this. What do you think? And making it a much more gentle conversation rather than a pitch. I'm hoping I'm answering.
No, that's great.
Question.
It's perfect, because what you're talking about is relationship building too. Like, you're talking about the relationships with those around you, as well as, and particularly with the pitching to a publisher. I think people forget, because there's a lot of people that want to pitch to a publisher.
Yeah.
But, you're an unknown. So
totally.
Why should they buy into you? Why should they buy into your ideas? So what you're talking about is taking, not rushing in and, I've got this great idea and you should buy it, but about the process of developing a relationship with people.
And there's a why would you, there's definitely embracing why would you want to work with me on this? I'm embracing the fact that they're probably going to be asking that question. But I should be asking that as well. Like, I think also it's very easy as an author, I think, to get self-absorbed, get in your own little bubble of, your book is the most important thing in the world right now and everyone's going to jump when you ask them to. I think you start with the assumption that no one's going to jump and no one thinks that this is important to anyone but you. And so therefore you've got to kind of pull yourself out of that sense of, this is the most valuable thing the world's going to see in the next 12 months. And in fact, almost approach the conversation from, hey, unless I get you on board, this idea is pretty insignificant. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah. So there's one other person that I know that you talk about in the case of getting buy-in from. So you've talked about, your family and those around you, the important people. You've talked about, obviously, the publisher that you went through.
Yeah.
But you also talk about it starts with you.
Yeah.
Like the whole how can you get other people to buy into your ideas if you're not bought into your idea yourself?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Love it.
So in terms of, your writing, because we all know that writing is not roses and plain sailing. It doesn't just, magically happen from A to B and, you're part of the journey and you're loving every second. There must have been times during the process where you were doubting yourself. Were there times where you found that resistance? And I guess, how did you manage that? Because, like, you're central to that idea to get everybody else's buy-in and to continue through. How did you manage those times where, you might have been doubting or resisting? Is this good enough?
Yeah. Oh, that's, many, many times. I mean, the idea of, you have to buy in yourself is, I write about this in the book, that the idea that, there's two states that you can be in when you're trying to get people's buy-in. And I think the same is exactly true for an author. You can be in that state of what I call the courier, which is, the person who's just delivering a message. So I'm just writing the book. I know what the message is supposed to be. I just write it in order to get it done. But then there's the catalyst state, which is where the catalyst cares and the catalyst really has an energy around the message they're delivering, and more importantly, not the message, the change and the effect it's going to create. And so as this idea of, stepping into that catalyst state, I think being really clear on that big so what that you're getting at, like, why am I writing this and why does it matter to my audience and why the hell would they care? So there were a few things to that. One was, I wrote and had for myself a few different snippets of, I had like avatars in my head of audience I was writing for, firstly. And, those avatars were actually real people that I know. So clients or participants in workshops where I talked about these themes before, and I thought, why do they care? Why is this book important to them? So, for example, if it's for the manager of a team who has a very inclusive nature, the buy-in book for them was, well, how do I actually get to this place where I can lead not from my place of management and authority, but I really want to be able to lead from a place of the merit of my ideas and creating trust. Or I might have had another person who was, a real deep expert technically on their product and had brilliant ideas, but no one was ever listening to them. And they were going, how do I get cut through? I'm sick of everyone around here seems to be an idiot. How do I get them to listen to me? And so I had those 2 or 3 avatars, and they were my anchor points that I would keep going to. And actually, this is where working with you, Kel, was so powerful, because you would often keep dragging me back to that question of who's reading this? Because you seem to have started writing for somebody else. Like, I've lost who the audience is because your voice has shifted, or your message has shifted, or for the people I thought we were writing it for, I feel like you're letting them down because you've gone down this other little rabbit hole, and they're going, why are you writing about that? That's not for me. And that was really powerful. So having the avatars, number one, and then second, having the people in your support crew who either would pull you up when you'd lost your way a little bit, or if not pull you up, kind of just coach you back. Or even, I remember you at times saying, you know what, don't write anything today. Don't stop. Just stop. Don't do anything tomorrow. Just sit. Let's go back to chapter structure. Let's think about that and just stop writing for 24 hours or even a week. And the permission to do that in itself was enough to go back and, like, talk about romance your purpose, like sit back and stop worrying about the what and just sit back and have a hot date with your why. And, or even your wife if you need to. Anyway, that's another. But have a hot date with your why and just sort of sit there and go, okay, what the hell am I trying to do here? So, yeah, I think that was really important.
Yeah. And so you've talked a lot about your why you were writing the book. What did you really want to achieve from writing it? And how, given that this was a little while ago, that how did your expectations kind of match up from what you were expecting at the start and how you've ended up afterwards?
Yeah. The reason that question's kind of difficult to answer is if I had my time again, I think I would be clearer when I set into the book of exactly what I wanted to change once I had written it.
Yeah.
So I think in reflection, this book was really about me. Part of it is proving to myself I could write a book, knowing I wanted to write a book. But the threads, the path towards that book, Work With Me, that you held up a minute ago, the path to that for 24 months, I think it was only really the last 6 to 9 months that it was clear that that's the book I was actually going to write. Because there were so many different possibilities for me. And so why did I choose to write the book Work With Me? Why did I choose to write the book that was all about how to get people to buy into your ideas, of all the things I could have written about? I think for me it was because it was what I knew well. It was what I had spent a lot of time already working with clients on, and I wanted to crystallize it and kind of package it, formalize it and say, this is it. But I didn't have a really strong strategic vision of, okay, and once I've done that, here's what's going to happen with it. I had little snippets in my head. I had like, maybe I'll have a whole bunch of keynotes that I'll run off the back of this, or maybe I'll create an online course, or maybe I'll run a training business where I'll have so many people who want to run training on that I'll have a whole suite of trainers running it, and it'll be a big leveraged model and maybe even licensed stuff. But actually, that's not necessarily what happened, because what did happen was the book itself was enough of an achievement for me, but also enough of a signal to the market that that I was leveling up in a sense. I was stepping into the conviction. I was not, if a decade earlier I had been a trainer and a consultant, I was now an author, and an author meant that I was also putting myself out there as someone who wanted to lead thinking on a topic. And that led to a whole influx of work and refreshed relationships. And so I got really busy off the back of it. But it wasn't a whole bunch of workshops or sessions called Work With Me. It was a whole bunch of work. So it's a hard question to answer because there was no A to B straight line.
So would you do that differently the next time, do you think? Has it given you that point where you think that you would potentially be a bit more strategic about why? Like how would you do things differently next time?
I would do it differently next time, but I probably, in honesty, I don't think I would if I went back in my time machine. I'm not sure I would do it differently the first time. And you and I are talking about that. I think now that I reflect on it, I think that's actually a really good reason, when you're already really busy and you've already got a lot of ideas going, a really good reason to write a book is to distill it all down and go, okay, folks, you're all benefiting and enjoying the work I do. Let me now try and capture a whole chunk of it here. But what that now has let me do, and it probably took a year out from publishing, so we're now getting close to 2 years since publish. It's allowed me over the course of that journey to go, why did I write that book? And actually to go, because I think the whole notion of creating buy-in is absolutely foundational to everything I do. So my whole philosophy and angle and passion is around collaborative leadership, inclusive leadership, leading from a place of the great ideas that you and your team can create, not from your big L leadership, as I call it. That you're coming at it from a place of authority. So with that in mind, I totally see why I wrote that book. But now I'm ready for my next book to be much more around, all right, so where do I want to go to with that now?
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's almost like a kind of maturing, isn't it, too, of your own ideas.
Yeah, and we spoke about it's like that step by step. Like you wouldn't be where you're at now unless you've taken that first step by doing that book.
Yeah. The metaphor I sometimes think about is like about, I don't know, 15 years ago when we bought our first house, I just started buying wine and putting it under the bed to cellar it. I'm not sure under a bed counts, but you kind of get the idea. And I think the only reason I was doing that because I'd grown up in a family where wine was cellared. So it was this notion of wine's great when you keep it. So I just kind of did it because I feel like that's what you should do. I'm kind of investing in creating a future that I haven't yet really got a clear picture of. And then it just sort of sat there for 10, 15 years. And then suddenly you start opening it and then you start going, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that. And there's an element of that, I think, too, with everything you do, whether it's writing a book or doing anything that is creating and capturing your ideas in a published format that you can then, it's like a time capsule that you pull out and go, wow, I wrote that. Why did I write it that way? What did that represent? And the thing I'm most proud of is as I read that book, every part of it now, I'd go, you know what? I'd still write it like that. There's no bits of it that I cringe and go, what was I thinking? So the timing of writing it was right, but it's also a really nice sense of building your own platform of thinking, ideas. And there's still heaps of people who are buying the book and saying, wow, I love what you write in that book. And I love the tone with which you've written it, which was so important. Because it really, I could hear you talking to me as you wrote it and all of that. Sorry, I'm waffling a bit now, but
no, good. Because what you're saying, and that's an ultimate testament to you, Simon. You wrote something that's timeless. So rather than writing something and then it being old and outdated and you hating and reading it back and cringing at it, within 6 months, it's a couple of years on and you've still got all that joy and all that, wow, this is really good. And you've still got people buying it and you've still got comments and things like that. So that really is a testament to the message that you worked on. And, and that built, like you made the foundation, like that's really the work. That's what you did. So,
no, that's nice. So so, and it's as a result of that, I think that then means you can kind of go, okay, where do I want to take people now? Because I feel like I've created the starting of a journey. And where do I want to take them? And I've got lots of ideas about that, and you and I have been talking about them. But stay tuned, huh?
So just quickly, finally then, Simon, what would you say are your top 3 tips for someone who wanted to master the art of buy-in?
I master the art of buy-in.
Yep.
Such as writing a book. Phew. top three tips for mastering the art of buy-in.
Yep.
I think my first tip would have to be to be absolutely clear, and this comes back to what we were talking about before, clear and passionate about what it is that you're trying to create. I think first thing we get wrong with buy-in is that we have an idea or a proposal and we get attached to it. But actually, I think what you need to get attached to is the effect that you're wanting to have from that idea or that proposal. So if I want to, introduce a new kind of way of working in our organization, for example. It's actually not the way of working that I should care about. It's the result of it that I should care about and be passionate about that. And the reason that's important is, A, you don't lose sight of, because you're going to face pushback, you're going to face resistance. You don't lose sight of that end result, even when you get that pushback and those objections. But the second part of it leads to the second tip, which is, once you've got clarity around what you're trying to achieve, hold on to the idea itself quite lightly. In other words, be prepared to let go, be prepared to let other people into the conversation. Be prepared to let other people have their ideas heard. Be prepared to let other people shape the result. And in the book, I talk about this as being the step into a what's possible stance, which is, as I come into a conversation with my proposal, whether it's, here's my book proposal, for example. I want to write a book called Work With Me, and it's about ideas and how to get people to buy in. I now need to adopt a what's possible stance, which is, as I sit here with my conversation with, whether it's the publisher or whoever, where I think to myself, well, from this conversation, I wonder what's possible. In other words, what might change here because of their input to it, or what might actually get better because of their perspectives. And that requires me to be a little bit courageous about letting go and not knowing the answer to every question in that conversation. So that's my second tip, is hold the idea lightly, adopting that what's possible stance. And then the third tip for getting people's buy-in to ideas is, I think it's really difficult, and the word ideas probably is the clue to this. It's very easy rather to stay in this place of we're just talking ideas and concept. If you want people to buy into something, give them a really clear and easy first step to take to experience it or to test it out. In other words, it's too easy to try and sell the big change, the big overall shift, and talk about that. It's not easy to do it. It's easy for us to get into that space, but I think it's much easier for people to come on board when you say, well, look, let's just try this one thing next week or tomorrow, and it will only take half an hour of your time. Let's give it a go. Let's see how it goes. And at the end of it, let's chat about, did it work? Didn't it work? If not, let's ditch it. If it's not working for you, we won't do it, but let's just give it a little go. And actually getting people's buy-in through baby steps is probably a lot more powerful than trying to do it in one big bolus chunk.
Love it. Thank you, Simon. I'm just going to show you your book again. Work With Me, How to Get People to Buy Into Your Ideas, by the lovely Simon Dowling. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you, Kelly. And look, just formally, thank you. Not formally, we've said it many times, but I think it's so important to capture the role that you played in helping me get to that book, and the coaching piece is just so powerful. So, yay you.
Thanks, Simon.